The nightmares didn't begin with explosions. They began with a feeling, a subtle sense of threat that lingered even after waking up. Somewhere in the quiet moments between sleep and consciousness, a thought would surface. The mind doesn't always know when the danger has passed. At the time, he didn't question it. He only felt the weight it left behind. Every night followed the same pattern. His body fell asleep, but his nervous system stayed awake. The dreams weren't always violent, but they were intense. Running without knowing from what, searching for safety that never appeared, waking up with his heart racing, his chest tight, his breath shallow. Sometimes he couldn't remember the details, only the fear that remained long after his eyes opened. Living with war-related anxiety meant the nights were no longer a place of rest. Darkness became a trigger. Silence gave space for images, memories, and imagined scenarios to replay themselves. Even when the war wasn't physically near him, his mind carried it everywhere. During the day, he tried to function normally. He worked, spoke to people, answered messages. From the outside, nothing seemed wrong, but exhaustion followed him constantly. Not the kind that sleep could fix, but the kind that comes from never fully relaxing. His body was always preparing for something, even when nothing was happening. At night, he avoided sleep. He stayed up scrolling, watching videos, keeping lights on longer than necessary. He told himself he just wasn't tired yet. In reality, he was afraid of what would happen when he closed his eyes, afraid of losing control, afraid of being trapped again inside his own mind. But what happened next would quietly change how he understood his fear. One night, after waking up from another dream soaked in panic, he noticed something unusual. The room was calm, no noise, no threat. His body, however, reacted as if he were still inside the nightmare. His heart didn't know the difference between memory, imagination, and reality. He didn't realize that moment was already shaping a deeper understanding of anxiety. For a long time, he believed the nightmares meant something was wrong with him, that he was weak for not moving on. He compared himself to others who seemed unaffected, who slept peacefully despite the same news, the same images, the same uncertainty. This comparison only added another layer of shame to the fear. What followed challenged everything he believed about control and healing. He began to notice that the nightmares weren't random. They appeared after days of constant alertness, after hours of consuming updates, images, and stories that kept his nervous system on edge. His mind never had the chance to return to safety. Sleep simply exposed what his body had been holding all day. This realization didn't stop the nightmares immediately. Some nights were still intense. Some mornings still began with tension. But instead of fighting his mind, he started listening to it. He noticed how fear accumulated, how avoidance made it stronger, how his body needed signals of safety, not more vigilance. There were setbacks, nights when anxiety won again, nights when he woke up convinced something terrible was about to happen, but slowly something shifted. He stopped judging himself for the fear. He stopped demanding that sleep be peaceful. He allowed rest to come imperfectly. He asked himself questions he had avoided before. What if the nightmares weren't a sign of danger, but a sign of exhaustion? What if his mind wasn't broken, just overwhelmed? What if safety wasn't something the world could give him, but something he had to teach his nervous system again? There was one realization he only understood later. The nightmares weren't the enemy. They were a message from a system that had been stuck in survival mode for too long. Gradually, the nights softened. Not every night, not immediately. But sometimes he slept without waking in panic. Sometimes the fear faded faster in the morning. He learned that recovery didn't mean forgetting what happened or what could happen. It meant learning how to come back to the present again and again. He realized how many others were living the same hidden struggle, carrying war-related anxiety in silence, functioning during the day while their nights were filled with fear, wondering why their minds wouldn't let go, even when they desperately wanted peace. There's something he discovered through this process that might help others too. If anxiety, fear, or recurring nightmares have become part of your life, you can explore the psychological materials mentioned in the description and comments. They're there to help you understand the anxiety and fear more deeply and to learn how to calm the mind and nervous system step by step. The nightmares didn't disappear forever, but they lost their power. And he learned something essential along the way. Healing doesn't mean erasing fear. It means teaching the mind when it is finally safe to rest.